Chair Huntsman, Sean Newell, and Laura Belknap in attendance as board members. Jason, you'll need to mute. Thank you.
Did she say it?
Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, we're very happy to have all of you here with us today. We have some guests with us today. We appreciate that. I don't know that I'll ever get Regional Educational Services Agency rather than NEST schools, or the regional service centers that serve NEST schools. Anyway, we're going to start today with information. Scott Jones, do you have some information on recognitions, progress, achievements, or improvements today?
I do. Thanks, Chair Bell. I'm Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Scott Jones. Two, we want to recognize USBE construction. Finance Committee members recall, I believe it was Chair Huntsman that asked, what progress had been made or where we were at. So as of today, we're ready to, reoccupy the building. So go ahead and show some of the other, go to the next slide, I guess, or next picture, please. So this is kind of the before and after. So we did some carpet upgrade, and Cammie can jump in here anytime she wants as well. So is there another picture? Yeah, some cubicle renovation. So on the left, what it looked like before, and now this is what it looks like after. And Cammie, is that in teaching and learning area?
Yeah, this is all in teaching and learning.
Right, all of it. Okay. Okay, next one. Same, this is all in teaching and learning's area. So as we all know, teaching and learning is a big section. IT had some configurations done several months ago. This is the entryway to licensing. So notice the difference in the counter and the look, the aesthetics, I guess we would say. So
Scott, the other thing they actually did open that up so that it's ADA accessible now as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Next one, please. Yeah. And, that's the counter upgrade, another shot at it. So next one, please. Next, please. Is that it? That might be.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. And so, these are just the improvements to our building. There's been questions in the past about, what's the ROI of staying in the building and investing in the building? We pay a very good rate, so to speak, and it's just basically O&M, operations and maintenance of the building. So if we were to comparatively go out and try to seek another building, either to buy or lease, the costs of these renovations, which, again, we're pretty much complete, the benefits far outweigh the cost of going in and acquiring other buildings, or acquiring other space on a lease agreement. So just wanted to make sure I covered that as well. So if there's no questions or concerns about this information item, ma'am, I'll just move into just one more under this agenda item, if that's okay.
Scott, I have one question. I was wondering how much of the old it's not called paneling, the cubicle pieces we were able to use. How many were we able to use? Some of those again?
Cammie, can you address that?
So all of our old cubicles, if you can look in those pictures, are the higher cubicles, so they block out a lot of light. So we did not reuse any of the old cubicles, but we have donated several to different charter schools that could use those.
Okay, so they are getting repurposed by some way. Chair Huntsman? Chair, your hand is raised.
I got to unmute. There you go.
There.
Hey, I just want to thank Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones and staff for bringing the upgraded photos and this report forward. It's been a while since our board has had an update on our building and some of the renovations that have been taking place, working around this building being somewhat vacant. But I think it's important to know also that this was all part of a strategy to put these upgrades in place, ADA, and there's a whole handful of design criteria that went into this. And my last trip into that building, of course, I did it safe, social distancing, and etc. I was really quite pleased with what I saw, and if I was an employee in there, I definitely would enjoy the upgrades and just the way everything flows is a lot better, and I think we'll be able to provide a better service to the public education community with having a better resting place for our employees, and then also for people to come from the outside in. So thank you for that work. You've heard this saying before. You're making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and we have this whole building that we're in and belongs to the state, and we're doing the very best that we can in staying in that space. And I just want to commend all of those that were making the decisions on layouts and materials and et cetera to keep things within budgets. And there's probably on the recognition side, there's probably quite a few people that names ought to be mentioned, but I don't dare start, or I'll miss one or two. But this was a very collaborative effort to get all of this in place. So thank you.
With my PI business too, it's just
Thank you, Chair.
secretary called me the other
Okay,
day.
somebody's not on mute. Can someone figure it out?
I'm not sure if it's Michelle Buse. You may not be muted. And then I think Jennifer Thronson might not be. Other than that, we're good.
All right, thank you. I also appreciate this as well. And then I also would like to point out, if you have enough broadband or wide width, if you could put your video on when you speak, it just gives it a little more personal feeling. Thank you. Scott?
Trying to get my video running too, but it slows it down, so I might have to mute it. Ma'am, the other recognition that I want to make is to our well-seasoned and expert accounting staff. We've completed year-end close for state fiscal year 20. There's probably some minor things that Deborah might want to update you on. But this is year-end closes is necessary for us to address what will be item number 6 later on in this meeting, so that we can ensure that we're very transparent with both you, the board, and the public on what carry forward or excess funding balances remain and the plans for those. So we're right on track, for the iterative process of year-end close. But I just want to make a shout out or a call out, if you will, to not only the accounting staff, but you'll all see the collaborative effort that occurs between our internal accounting staff and the section leaders, related to their budgets and the amounts or balances. And that's so important that we track, every dollar, and that we come to you, in line with item number 6 later on in the meeting, so that you as a board can determine, whether or not, or recommendations to the board on allowable uses of funding. And we progress together into another great year, which is, state fiscal year 21. So again, all my deepest and sincerest appreciation to all the staff for such a great job again in year-end close. Ma'am, subject to any other questions or concerns about this information item, that includes the 2 recognitions and improvements for this meeting.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. So we'll go on to number 2 on our agenda. It's the Regional Educational Services Agencies, or RESA. reports and requests for funds. Angie, I'm not sure who is going to start this. If each group would, if you'll introduce yourself and who you are, and we've set aside about 20 minutes for presentation and then 10 for question and answer, if that will fit everybody's allowable time. If you have something else, let me know.
Chair Belknap, I believe Duke Mossman might be taking lead. Duke, would you like to introduce it?
Actually, I'm going to be introducing us today.
Great.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you,
how are you?
Committee Chair Belknap. We really appreciate that. Board Chair Huntsman, it's good to see, good to be with you, and Board Member Newell. Thank you for allowing us a few minutes of your time on your agenda today. My name is Joby Wright. I am the Executive Director of the Southwest Education Development Center, which is one of the 4 regional educational agencies. And happy to be with you today. I'll just talk about a couple of introductory things, and then we're actually going to turn some time, if the chair is okay, we'll turn some time over to a superintendent from each one of the regional service agencies to talk about their regional service center. So if I may, whoever's running the slides, is it Angie? Would you go ahead and go to the next one, please?
Yes, and it is me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So just as way of introduction, I think most of you are familiar with us. We started out as rural service centers back in 1969 to help the 26 rural school districts in 4 separate regions. And there's a map there to kind of show you the different geographical areas that the 4 centers cover. We've expanded since that time to now we offer our services as well to 15 charters in those same geographical areas. But the main reasons that we were first established was to provide economies of scale and educational equity for those smaller rural school districts. And obviously we've changed and grown over time to expand what we do. And we're happy to always be looking for new opportunities to innovate. Please, Angie, go ahead. I think that it goes without saying that all of you are familiar with these USBE strategic goals, but we just wanted those to be part of our presentation as a way to make it very clear that we see ourselves as an extension of USBE and of UETN, that we are here to support USBE in their strategic goals. Just as a quick example of that, I got up early this morning and we just received our sanitizing wipes from Sarah Young and USBE yesterday. And so I got up early this morning and took a load up to Board Chair Huntsman's home school district, Millard County, and dropped them off at the warehouse and made it back here to Cedar City. So we see ourselves as truly as an extension of everything that USB is trying to do, with some local control as our governing boards are our superintendents and charter directors. So it's a great mix of local control working with state agencies. Go ahead, Angie, please. We also just wanted to thank the board for their formal support through action of the board, and also any informal support of this great collaborative effort that took place last year. During the 2020 legislative session, Senator Hillyard sponsored Senate Bill 79, and Representative Last was the floor sponsor in the House, which created a different type of educational entity. It changed our names from regional service centers to regional education service agencies. We felt like it was important to become an agency. It clarified some of our responsibilities and duties, and also gave the USBE the charge to create a new coordinating council between the RESAs and USBE. And then we just want to also mention that those additional changes are being brought to the committee today as possible amendments to Board Rule R277-706, and I'm sure you'll discuss that more later on. But we just really appreciate the collaboration and the cooperation that we had with USBE staff and board members as we developed the necessary changes to make us more effective and more helpful in what USBE is trying to accomplish. So as we now kind of transition to each one of the service agencies, we'll begin with SCDC, and so you'll see a close tie-in, everything that we do with the USBE strategic goals, as well as the actions that we are mandated to cover under Utah State Code. But with the chair's permission, I'll turn the time over to Superintendent Bergeson from Washington County School District, who's currently the chair of the SCDC board.
Thank you, Joe. Well, I certainly would like to have Superintendent Ferguson come on. I also, if they'll introduce themselves, just so we have it in the recording as well each time a new person is presenting. Thank you. Superintendent?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Is there a chance we could see you as well? I don't know.
Let me see if I can do that.
Okay.
Superintendent, find yourself in the participant list, and then there should be a camera option there.
I think I had that earlier, but I slid back. Let me see if I can find that real quick. There I am right there. They're bringing me up.
There you are. Thank you,
There I am.
Superintendent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to see everybody. I sent a text to Laura and told her that she just brings a smile on my face when I see her.
You were smiling on TV the other day.
Oh, good, Mark. Well, let me just talk just a little bit about SCDC. This service center covers the school districts of Beaver, Garfield, Iron Cane, Millard, and Washington. About 51,000 students is what it covers. And of course, Washington being the largest. And there are times when we don't benefit the same as the other smaller districts because of our size. And there are times when we provide services to the district. But I'll give you one example of how these service centers work, which are so critical for the smaller districts. We could get by without them because of our size and the services and the personnel that we have. It would be extremely difficult for the other districts that I mentioned to do that without their support. One example would be the autism person that we share in Paul Day. We have access to Paul and did, as a member district, and he was in our district, extremely talented, extremely capable, but he provides the autism services and is the expert throughout our SCDC region in providing that needed expertise and support to those schools. So that's just one example. And I'll be brief, just in the interest of time. But the thing that I would point out as we do our work through the region is a lot of the dissemination of not just services, but equipment. For example, the PPE, personal protective equipment associated with this virus that comes from the state goes through the service center. And they do a great job of taking care of that, meeting our needs, very timely, very efficient. They're staffed with technology needs. The support that they give, even for our district, is so beneficial and so helpful. The partnership, the cooperation. They constantly are providing trainings that, again, support the districts. And once again, for Washington County, it's not as critical in some of those areas as others because of our size. For example, a math endorsement or an ESL endorsement, we have people that provide those for us, but there are times or occasions in which the schedules don't fit our people that we offer, so they then jump to those that are provided by the SCDC. But that is largely used then by the other districts because without those services being offered, their staff would either have to travel a lot further or would not even have access to such endorsements. So those are just a few of the examples of things that we have that go through the service center. I'm going to kind of skip over these papers because a lot of it I'm just going to talk from what my experience has been. Joe B, as our service center director, and the other service center directors are phenomenal at being a liaison between legislative action. We go up often, but we can't always make it. You'll note that whether it's Duke, Jason, Joe B, was Scott, Shane, whoever takes over those duties or responsibilities, they are very, very active, very good, play a big role and part in all legislation, keeping us informed and keeping us together on what those activities are. Sterling Scholar, the whole Sterling Scholar program is run through SEDC for our region, and we have one of the most active divisions of that. I don't know if that's the right word, but we're so grateful for the work that they do in spearheading that with representatives from each of our districts. I'm not sure that there's more that I can say. There certainly is more, but in the interest of time with those 20 minutes, I'll be respectful of that. Just know that as member districts, ourselves being the largest and probably having the least need, we would notice it significantly if we didn't have the partnership with SEDC. But the remaining districts, once again, without the partnership, support, and expertise that comes through the service centers, they would notice an immediate hit and not be able to nearly as adequately provide for the education of their students without SEDC. So that's what I would say. If there's questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think we'll hold questions till the end. And then if someone has a specific for SEDC, then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks.
So I guess the question is who will be presenting on behalf of CUES?
Yeah, who's next?
I know Jason and Superintendent Hughes are there together.
Oh, Jason, I had unmuted, or is unmuted now. Try it again.
Okay.
Jason, there you go. You were unmuted and you muted yourself, Jason. Try again.
All right, this is Superintendent Hughes with UAB School District and representing CUES, but I can't seem to get the camera to work. Hold on.
That's okay. We just asked for that. It's just kind of nice to see you.
Go ahead. All right, apologize. Once again, and I'm here masked. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm in a room. We are actually in a CUES board meeting today. I have all 7 of our superintendents here. They're chimed in on this meeting with me. But we have, I'm just going to introduce these folks, even though you can't see them, just to give you names, though, for the state board and for those out there participating. We have 5 new superintendents this year in our CUES region. Starting with South Sanpete School District, we have Superintendent Squire. North Sanpete School District, Superintendent Alt. Tintic School District, Superintendent Thornock. Wayne County School District, Superintendent Shelley. Paiute County School District, Superintendent Willis. And then Sevier School District, as you guys know, Superintendent Douglas. And myself, now moving from Tintic over to UAB, Superintendent Hughes. So the 7 superintendents that represent the CUES Central Utah Educational Service Board are all here today. And I'm going to present just our items for discussion and understanding for CUES. If you'll go to the next slide, it's slide 11. It says delivery of Utah Education Network services. The biggest item that I want to bring attention to in the interest of time would be the 116 teacher enrollment. So we have it's the second to last bullet. Teachers enrolled in education technology endorsements. This is a huge resource for our districts, providing resources for teachers to gain and increase their understanding and expertise in this area. Now, on all of these items, you're going to see that these are services because of our interest of networking with Snow College and in our opportunities to have trainings provided to our rural areas that stretches from West Desert schools in the Tintic School District throughout that middle section all the way into and down to Paiute and Wayne County School District. It's a huge resource for us just to have that network provided through our service center. Go ahead and slide to the next one. Delivery of higher education services. This one here is probably our biggest gain, has been over the last few years through our CUES region, has been the K-16 Alliance. K-16 Alliance brings not just ours, but also SCDC has superintendents that come over as well. And we all coordinate with our Snow College representation to provide a great resource for our students, involving our teachers that become remote instructors for the Snow College courses, and providing that through our cohort that we have with Snow College. Another thing that happens that doesn't happen so well for our rural areas, and we are able to get it through our regional service center, is the ESL endorsement. 105 teachers from 18 districts and charter schools. We're able to benefit both of those and both of the district and the charter school entities with ESL endorsements, which, you know, we think that that's a common thing on the Wasatch Front. It is, and the availability for those courses is not so available for us. But through our work with our service center of CUES, our charter schools and districts have been able to affect 105 of our teachers. Go to the next slide. Coordination of public and higher education services. Now, the biggest one, I'm just gonna speak to this today because it's something that's been on our board meeting today as we've talked about it. But HB 373 has been just a huge and essential part of our growth from the service center standpoint. That bill that we were able to tap into through our regional service center put $350,000 into the Central Utah Mental Health Services for our districts. And now, because of that opportunity, we have our smaller districts and our mid-sized districts all having the opportunity to have mental health services into our school buildings. Now, that was started last year, and then COVID came, and now we are rebooting that and starting fresh this year. But the amount of services and the opportunity that now we can put in the place of student lives and our families has just been, it's going to be tremendous. But now where mental health services were not available, we do have that. And I have to point out that without the regional service centers, there's no way that our local districts could have found the resource or the hub per se to provide the grant opportunity, and then also to provide just the writing of that grant. Another one that I want to bring up just on that slide is please look at the 37,000 checkouts. Now, being to have our cohort with our overdrive and through CUES, we've been able to provide these reading structures and opportunities for students in that digital format. But 37,000 checkouts in our region to students that would normally not have that resource to them, but we do have it through our service center. In closing, I just have to say that I have been the beneficiary of our CUES Regional Service Center since my induction as a superintendent. My 10 years in Tintic, I've seen it greatly benefit our students out there from the West Desert area through Tintic and Eureka, and now as JUAB. And we were discussing just today how we're bringing robotics and we're bringing programs that our service center can provide to our kids. And I appreciate the efforts of our directors. I know that Superintendent Bergeson brought this up, but these directors they're just far and beyond what we could have hoped for in their service, and they just keep finding ways to provide resources and funding to us. So if there's any questions about the Central Utah Service Center, please, I'll entertain those questions, but I appreciate you guys having us today.
Thank you, Cody. Okay, who's going to do SCDSC?
Okay, my name is Lance Hatch, and I'm the superintendent of Carbon School District. And excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our humble 4 districts that 4 counties that we have over here. All four of our counties, Carbon, Emory, Grand, and San Juan, are drastically different in geography and population and demographics and everything. And however, we feel like we are one unit because we meet together so often through the service centers, and we work together so well. We have a new executive director, Shane Erickson. We're excited that he's with us, and he's going to help us to be able to accomplish the things that we need to do. We have two charter schools also, Moab Charter and Pinnacle Canyon. So on the next slide, you'll see a list of several things. Superintendent Ferguson and Superintendent Hughes went over a lot of the same services that we receive. I would just highlight on here that one of the benefits of working with a group of districts like this in a service center is that we get to do things that and we have opportunities that we might not have had otherwise. But they coordinated a security audit and penetration test for protection of student data and information. It was extremely comprehensive, and they actually brought somebody in and they connected to our system and tried to hack in to see what they could find, and through that penetration test, we found weaknesses in our systems across the districts where we were able to fix the leaks and plug them up. So we're excited that we have opportunities like that you wouldn't really think about when you think about an education entity, but that's very important, and we need to do it. We just don't have the expertise or maybe even the time to organize that. And our service center was able to do that. So on the next slide, one of the things that I thought we'd highlight was also highlighted by Superintendent Hughes, but in this time of coronavirus and students out on remote learning and things like that, we have a greater need than ever for our regional online library, and having one small district would struggle pulling that together, and not only providing the online library, but the services, the coordinating services that go with it as far as professional development. Because you can have an online library, but if the teachers don't know how to use it and don't know how to communicate it to the parents and the students, then it's a struggle. So we have that in our service center. We have the personnel to help support, but we also have the actual online libraries that our kids can access, more important now than ever. On the next slide, thought one of the great things that we benefit from is in a small district, especially if you're a little bit remote, recruiting teachers is difficult. And when we have the opportunity to hire someone, even though they're not fully certified, sometimes that's the best candidate we have, and in some cases it's the only candidate we have. So getting them licensed is really important, and getting them quickly to have some good university type education that would help them with classroom management, understand special ed, all these things that they might not have been exposed to before. And through the service centers, we're able to get them those 5 initial classes right up front, right off, that get them going on the basics of teaching and all the things that they need to really hit the ground running. So again, we wouldn't be able to do that. You keep hearing this, but we wouldn't be able to do it. But combining all of the districts together, pooling resources and having the service centers do a lot of the legwork, working with universities to pull this off, makes it possible. So we just really appreciate them in all the different aspects that you're hearing about today.
Thank you, Lance. Okay, news. Who's doing news?
I'm Dave Brotherson. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Dave. How you
There we
doing,
go.
Dave?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
I'm the president of news this year as a superintendent. Duke Mossman is our executive director. We're based out of Heber. We represent 9 school districts and 5 charters. We go everywhere from Daggett to Rich County on the top, and then Uinta, Duchesne, Wasatch on the bottom. We range from the smallest district in the state, or close to the smallest, to some of the larger ones. And so, like Larry said, Superintendent Bergeson, some help the smaller schools, and then we in turn are able to give back to them with some of the things that we're doing as well. We serve 32,000 students. We have 1,969 educators. Duke has 6.5 FTE on his staff. Most of the things that I would bring up have been mentioned by the other 3 service centers. But one of the things that we do rely on a lot is his network engineer. We rely on UEN as well. But as we're gearing up for online education and a few things like that because of the pandemic, they're a huge resource for us to be able to get information to our students and just use their knowledge and UEN's knowledge to bolster up our network. We have regional trainers, technology trainers, the things that we can't provide within our district. Mr. Snow is able to provide and travel around and help us with training with our teachers. Some of the things that I would just like to bring up is Superintendent Bergeson talked about Sterling Scholar, but we're able to do that through our news group as well. And then we do an art show, and they have a base in Heber, and then they also have a base in the Basin where our kids in our schools are able to compete or to show their talent with everyone that's in our region. Some of those things wouldn't be available without Duke and without the news staff. This last spring, with driver's ed not being able to be done in the typical fashion, we were able to do online driver's ed. There's just a lot of programs there that we're able to provide through news as a group that we don't have as individuals. I hesitate to say this, and I probably won't mention any names, but as we try to do, as Lance brought up, Superintendent Hatch, try to do professional development with our staff, sometimes moving the higher education ball is a little bit difficult. And as you approach different colleges, as an individual, you don't have much credibility in change. And as a group, we can send news or send the service centers in, and they can help us bring programs to all of the smaller districts in the state, all 4 of the regional service centers, and they have a lot more pull because they represent a lot more people. Even on our concurrent enrollment, as we were dwindling in the classes that we were offering, we were able to present to some of the other colleges that maybe were a little smaller and more interested in serving our students. And we were able to bring some programs in, some classes in that benefit them. The endorsements for our teachers, that's already been brought up by Cody and Superintendent Hughes. And then Edgenuity. Right now, I'll just bring this up. This is a program, so I'm probably shouldn't be pushing the program, but online curriculum. We have 600 students this fall that decided to stay online, just in our district alone, not in the news region, just in Duchesne School District. And they're being served by Pathblazer and Edgenuity and some of those other online programs that will send them their curriculum. And we're able to do that through Basin Online where we can support them with tutors and with teachers, but send that out to their computer and it can be home-based. We get better pricing as a group than we would as an individual when we're purchasing those licenses, and we're able to help each other as we purchase those as a group, because they go on max usage. And so if there's 122 kids on it at one time, that's the licenses you pay for rather than the 500 kids that are using those. Mental health services, we have a sprinkling of mental health services in our district, but through Duke and his team, they're able to support us and to help us to be better, to have a better plan. And we've already talked about purchasing and being able to get a better price. We have a Wasatch Back conference in the fall, which all of our districts participate in. Our teachers have an opportunity to present and share what we're doing, and then we learn from others. We've talked about the driver's ed and how important that was last spring. And then Canvas and the things that we're doing this spring with Edgenuity. The art show is awesome. And that's something that the arts, it's hard to bring those into a rural area and to bring in the professionals. And our students actually have had artwork purchased by some of the judges that have come in to do the art show. And it's just a great experience to sit in and see those kids represented as well. They do a wonderful job. Duke and his staff are awesome. They extend our ability as administrators to do a better job in our district, and don't know what we would do without them. So thank you.
I guess I shouldn't call you Dave. I should thank you, Superintendent Brotherson. Thank you to all the superintendents. One piece that I heard continually through here is how much you appreciate and look to your directors for leadership and for guidance, and I really appreciate that piece. Joe, are we coming back to you? Do you have, first of all, okay, good, we're to questions. All right.
Nope, we're on the performance measures. This is Duke Mossman. Sorry, I've got the last couple of slides.
No, Duke, we're not going to let you have a turn. Okay, go ahead, Duke.
Okay, so we just wanted to mention these are our annual performance measures that are reported to the legislature every year. And so we have our annual goals that are set, that we set a couple of years ago, actually about 2.5 years ago. And our performance data is there based on those 4 measures. So we were down on our training hours and down on our technical support services, but over on our participation hours and our graduate credit hours that were generated. And we've kind of had the same trend over the last 2 years. And so we'll probably be getting with Jill to adjust the ones that we're higher on, probably up, and the ones that we're lower on, probably down for the next go around. But anyway, any questions on these performance measures? Okay, if not, then we are.
Any board members have questions? Any board members? Okay, Duke, go ahead.
Okay, so last is questions. So I'm happy to field, and anybody else that presented, they can also field questions if you have any for us board members.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments? Chair Huntsman, your hand is raised, but I don't know if that's just been sitting there.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, my hand has been raised. I just wanted to get in line because I figured there would be some. I appreciate the debrief of the kind of the services and that, but through all of this, you're preaching to the choir. I just want to recognize all their work and effort that they've been going through, and all I hear is good things. And from sitting in meetings with them as they're discussing the needs of their service agency now, I'm just totally amazed that it's all about what more can we do, how can we do it better. Very open on the service side. In fact, that that's what you are, is a service agency. So thank you for your efforts and work. And I hope you just continue on that way, that complacency doesn't kick in, and it's all about the students and the educators and how to make that great education happen. So thank you for your service and your work. It's been a fun journey this last year or so, and we've got a lot of work to do moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate all of your support and help.
Board Member Belknap, we also have a hand raised from Superintendent Dixon.
I can't see everything, Angie. Dr. Dixon, please.
Oops, I'm trying to start my video. Don't know if that worked. Thank you so much. I appreciated these great presentations, but I have loved being in rural schools, and just without inquiry on my part, having a principal or a student tell me that they've just received their science kit from News, or they're working on a particular project with the help from CUES or wherever it might be from. And I don't think I've visited a rural school where the Regional Service Center hasn't been brought up. And just so appreciate the relationship that our office has with you and the great work that you're doing. So thank you for everything, and especially for the commitment to students in rural schools to make sure that they get a quality education. And that's for our superintendents on the call as well. Thank you.
It's interesting that the students would know the names of these groups. I can hardly remember them with all the letters there. So, okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? And Angie, I believe this was an action item. Am I missing that somewhere in this one? Or are we waiting for rule?
Let me look. I do not know if you have an action. It might just be that the board is required to.
No. It's the review, and now the rule is the next item. So this is for the information, but you do, what the action item is to approve the funding request. And it's the $2 million that flows to them, which, we have already sent, so it's kind of a timing issue. But that's part of the rule, I believe, Angie, is that they have to make the request for the funds.
Right. So I think it is the rule.
Well, yeah. So Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, though. The rules, the 706 is the rule that governs this presentation and the request for funds as well, right, Ange? And then you're doing the rule now.
I'm not sure if it's the statute or rule. Okay. You don't know if it's in the rule or statute. The question is, do they need this action right here? It sounds like that's already been done.
Yeah. Well, so the board did approve the budgets for state fiscal year 21. Okay. It's kind of a timing thing. So, and we already, my understanding is we've already dispersed the funds, right, Duke?
Yes, the funds are flowing.
Right. So, at this point, it's probably just a procedural aspect.
Okay, so what I'm thinking, Scott, is that we're just going to go on to number 3, and then if we need to come back and do something different, then we will.
Yeah, that's what I recommend. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who took time for the presentation. I think you're probably staying around to stay with us for number 3 action item, our 277706 Public Education Regional Service Centers amendment. Ben, I'm going to turn the time over to Ben Rasmussen.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. As Director Wright mentioned in his presentation, as a result of SB 79, there were a lot of changes with regards to the regional the service centers. And so we've tried to capture a lot of those in this rule. In the rule, we've updated the language terminology throughout the rule. We've also clarified a lot of the responsibilities for the REISs going forward. And we've provided provisions for the coordinating council that Director Wright also talked about. And we've talked about the funding that you were just addressing, that there's a language talking about how the board has to make a decision there. So that's all encapsulated in R277706. We've done this in conjunction with the directors of the RESAs, so they've been actively involved and made give us a lot of good feedback on this rule. And we're happy to answer any questions you have. Draft 2 is the draft that is being recommended.
Ben, will you go over the section where we spent quite a bit of time having discussion on it and with the directors?
You're referring to applications?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so if you go to line 29 through 32, that's what was changed in draft 2. There was some questions that arose concerning just exactly when RESAs could apply for grant funds separate and apart from their member LEAs. And so we've clarified this, that they can always apply on behalf of their LEAs with the consent of the LEAs. That comes straight from the statute on 29 and 30. But we've also added the provision that if there are extra funds and the board takes action to specifically approve it, they can apply for grant funds in accordance with the board rule that implements the program. So there would be circumstances where the board might want to address that if there's funding to cover it, and that's the language that we're recommending to cover that concern.
And as we talked about this a lot, it took me a long time, and it may have been Duke who finally opened my eyes to this, because in my mind it felt like that they could apply on behalf of the LEAs and then apply on behalf of themselves to use necessarily in their own office or do whatever they wanted. But if I thought about it in reverse, that they apply on behalf of the LEAs, which would go out to the LEAs that have given them, who they work for. But then the others, if they apply for it, then they can use it in their office in addition for the LEAs, or to purchase an additional person or additional supplies or whatever is necessary for the RESA's office. Would that be a correct statement, Ben?
I think it is, and Angie can add to that if probably as well.
Thank you. This is, I'm actually speaking now I'll turn my video on. Yes, what I would state is the money probably wouldn't just be for their office, but it's essentially for services for their member LEAs. But it would be in addition to the amount that that the RESAs would be getting in subsection A. A would be on behalf of the LEAs, and they would just be administering the funds that the LEAs would have been entitled to. But B would be additional funds that I'm sure that the RESA would still be using on behalf of their member LEAs, but it would be an additional pot. But if that were the case, as it states here, that would to be stated or clarified how that would work in the board rule that governs that program.
So just for clarity, and then I'll open it up to board members. So for clarity, they have the option of getting money twice for their area and their people, but each program will have the decision made by the board whether that's a double. And I don't mean a double dip because I'm not trying to be rude here, but a double pick. How's that? All right. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Board members, do you have any questions on this rule?
None at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Mark?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. The question I have is these changes in that there's probably been some background, some additional meeting work with the regional service centers and over the past little while. And so I think it's important for the those that are tracking this. I know there's a lot of legislators, a lot of other districts that are very, they seem to, while they really love their, can we call them RSAs or what we've got to come up with something because I keep wanting to call them only RESA. Regional Education RESA groups. And they're propped up very well. with a lot of support out there. So the background behind these changes was a collaborative. Can you speak to that, Chair, as this is now in draft 2 form?
Yeah, Chair Huntsman, thank you for asking that. We've actually had several meetings. I think Angie and Duke have probably, and Joe have probably had more than I have, but I have been involved in the last couple, and I believe, and maybe one of those directors could tell us that they are comfortable with this language after the many meetings that have been had. So would one of you want to take that and have just make a statement here?
If it's okay with the chair, I will jump in. This is Joby Wright, the director of SCDC. I just wanted to, again, make sure that it was clear that most of these changes came from Senate Bill 79, which again was a collaborative effort between USBE and the regional education service agencies, and we appreciated that. And then just this last little change was just to make sure that we were all on the same page as far as which grant funding RESAs would be eligible to participate in behalf of their LEAs and in addition to their LEAs. And it has been very collaborative. We appreciate the efforts of staff and of board members reaching out to us, and we do support draft 2.
This is Duke Mossman.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Duke, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, we definitely concur with the changes. They line up very well with Senate Bill 69 or 79. I think the only issue that we discovered that we didn't really know when 79 went through was the actual definition of LEA. You know, I think through the session we made presentations to the legislature, et cetera, that RESAs were being set up as a separate or a new type of LEA, but in actuality, the bill language did not update the definition of LEA, so we got classified as an education entity and not an LEA. And so I think for now, I think everything is and will work great for us. But you know, if it ever becomes an issue, there may be some further change further on down the road. But I think for all intents and purposes, right now, this rule is perfect and does match the bill that was passed last year.
Thank you, Duke. If a rule is perfect, we are going to win. So, all right. Then if there's no further questions, Dr. Dixon, did you have a comment there? I didn't, maybe not. I don't see your hand raised. Anybody else? I don't see anyone else. Then I would be seeking a motion, please.
Can I make a motion? I have my hand raised.
Please, Chair.
All right, thank you. I'd like to make a motion that the committee approve R277-3, 1-2 draft. Oh no, I'm on the wrong one. Fred, where's it at? How did I?
It's on the screen, Chair.
Oh, there you go. That the committee approve R277-706 draft 2 on first reading and forward. I have like 4 things up on my screen at one time. And forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Any discussion to that motion?
Yes. I just want to say it's a privilege to watch the evolution of these service centers and how they continue to bring betterments to public education. Thanks again for their service.
Thank you. Then the motion before the board is that the committee approve R277-706 draft 2 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. All in favor? I think we can say aye with this many.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes unanimously, Cammie. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming and for your presentations today. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We do have one hand from Superintendent Bergeson.
Superintendent Bergeson.
Am I all right to speak?
Would I say no?
I just thank you so much for your support of these service centers. I just want to say that. You're a great bunch to work with. Secondly, the last thing I want to say while I've got the audience that we do in front of these service center directors, We often say in real estate, or you often hear said, the most important aspect of real estate is location, location, location. In our case, and with these service center directors, and often as a superintendent, we often point out that the three most important things in a successful district or in running these service centers is the people, the people, the people. These service centers directors, and we've said it, but I just want to end it by saying they are the right people. Talk about great, man. Easy to work with. You guys know them, and you commented. But just from myself personally, and as a group of superintendents, these service center directors are great. In fact, I'm having a hard time as I sit and think about them, not recruiting them all to just be in my district. That's my challenge. But anyway, thanks to each of them. They're the right people, and thanks for your support of them from the state school board. That's it.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will go on to item number 4, request for data and information. I don't believe that there were any this time, are there, Scott?
No, ma'am. We only just put in the USIMS program management review just for information, no presentation. You know, they do that about once a quarter just to keep you updated and the board updated. So it's just in there for your information, but there were no new data or information requests.
Okay, just Scott, just for a throw out too, and this information is being fed up how often to the legislature on the USIMS project?
So I do send the slides to the bill sponsors, but I just ask if there's any questions or concerns, but I don't get any back. I'm sure they get a lot of information and stuff, but I haven't heard back from them. So.
Okay, then we will go on to sorry, I was chatting. I was going on to item number 5. I don't think that we have any information here that wasn't from yesterday. Do we, Scott?
No, this is more of a blend of, this and the next item, the carry forward item, and Deborah will run that particular item, the carry forward balance.
Okay, so why don't we move to the next item? And if we have to reflect back here, we can. But let's move to the carry forward. What number is it on our agenda, Angie? It's hard for me to bounce. Where is it? Agenda one more over. Is it number 6?
It shows on mine.
Okay,
Yes.
I just like to make sure. Yes. Okay, so number 6 on our agenda is the state fiscal year 2020 closing and carry forward balances. So Scott, we'll turn this over to you and to Deborah.
Yeah, so thanks, ma'am. I'll just tee it off. Year-end close, a result always of year-end close is that there's, particular fund sources that may not have been spent or, expensed all the way down to zero. So that results in what's called carry forward, or what is termed non-lapsing balances. So the Board of Education is able to continue to carry these funds forward, meaning that we don't have to return them to the legislature. It's a great, and it shows a lot of trust in our ability to track each one of the dollars to its final destination, whatever that may be, a service or, purchasing of supplies or materials or what have you. So as part of the Budgetary Procedures Act, or, in accordance with the Money Management Act and the Budgetary Procedures Act, following the end of year-end close and the identification of particular balances, the accounting staff get with the program directors, i.e. teaching and learning, assessment, and formulate what's called a spend plan for your review, first of all, at the finance committee level, for you to have these individuals present what their spend plan is. There is a threshold to this. So any program that has carry forward of over $100,000 we bring to you. Anything less than $100,000, it's just worked out internally. So what you should see, and Deborah can correct me if I'm wrong, so what you should see is anything above $100,000 that requires your review of what staff are proposing the money go towards during this fiscal year, during fiscal year 21. So basically, the outcome that we're seeking is for each one of these spend plans is for you to make a recommendation to the board on whether or not to support or whether or not to approve staff using the funding in the manner that they are proposing to you today. Subject to any questions or concerns for me at this high level, Madam Chair, I turn it over to Deborah or Finance Director Jacobson for the additional drill down in each one of the particular programs, or each one of the particular sections. Assessment, I refer all of the committee members to their backups, but I think that we can probably display each one of the sections as we go. So, subject to any questions or concerns, ma'am. Turn it over to Deborah.
Deborah, are you going to go over each section of these, or are we just using what we've already studied on these today?
I think we should it will take a long time, I think, to go through them individually. I believe we do have some staff on that could answer any specific questions that you may have on the actual spend plans.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Scott, you're raising your hand? Oh, no. Okay. I don't.
Yeah, no, I did. I'm sorry. There is one particular request that the backups for is the English language learner, the teaching and learning has. We did send an email. I just want to double check on this. We did send an email out this morning orienting Finance Committee members to that particular backup. It was placed in the main board meeting agenda, for yesterday, but, so we're referring to that as well. You may want to just drill down on that one in particular. I agree with Deborah. It would take a lot of time to go one by one from the spend plans just because we have so many programs. But if you want to, and I think that's what you're saying, Madam Chair, is that, the Finance Committee members have had a chance to look or see these. If there's any particular questions, we just bring those up by exception. Does that sound like a plan?
That sounds exactly like what I'd like to do. Why don't we start with the ELL one? And just for clarity for committee members, we always have this on here to discuss carry forward and our additional funds. However, the backups got put in behind the CARES Act yesterday. So I think we should take a few minutes to go over this and what the request is on this one, because some may not have been able to see that this morning after it was sent. So let's have a review of this, please. Who's doing the review here, Scott?
Ma'am, I recommend, and I believe she's available, I recommend that Dr. Thronston do it. But I'm not sure I see her on the list.
She's on there. Jennifer?
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you, Scott. Director Thronston from Teaching and Learning, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this one a little bit more. So particularly, as you know, the EL software program was defunded in special session number 5 back in June, and then was again refunded in special session number 6 with a new allocation mechanism. Prior to this change, what we had before was $3 million that covered every English learner in the state, and we had a statewide contract to provide a software program for K-12 for English learners. After that was defunded, the new legislation that was added requires us to allocate the money to the LEAs to have them choose their software and to use their allocation to procure their solution related to an English learner software. And so prior cost point, just to kind of understand this, was about $138 per student is what we were paying considering the number of students participating. At this point with the allocation distribution, it's about $50 per student. And so you'll see some challenges in terms of our LEAs and being able to acquire products at their new price point. Specifically, our LEAs with small student numbers, their allocations can range from $50.25 up to about $9,600, which, given their populations, is generally insufficient for procuring a software product. So this request is to use some of our carry forward that we have in this program. We have $1.5 million available. We want to use about $606,000 of it this year to help support our LEAs that have less than 200 ELs in being able to secure a software program. One caveat to that is our big school districts, such as Salt Lake, have so much money that they can enter into a multi-year contract with their dollars. And so, unfortunately, due to the funding mechanism and how it's been put into legislation, it's created this inequity in the allocations. And so what we're looking to do is equalize that by providing those with small EL populations with about $6,000 more per LEA to allow them the functionality to actually adopt a software program that they could use, given that a lot of their funding sources are insufficient given the allocation distribution method to actually secure a product for their English learners. So the urgency around this one is that it's school years in. Unfortunately, we weren't told, the change until August 20th. Our staff has done the allocation, and now we see the issues within those allocations. And this is kind of our remedy to feed the system and be able to support our LEAs and the English learners. If you didn't listen in on that presentation to the legislative committee, we have 4% of our students in the English learner population that are demonstrating proficiency in English. Obviously, a student population that we have continued need to serve and to serve well. And so we were hoping to be able to move this one forward to support our LEAs in providing more effective programming for their students to become proficient in English as well as master the academic standards we have for students. So with that said, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Board members, Chair Huntsman. Chair Huntsman?
Hey, there you go. I'm getting used to all this control stuff. Sorry.
Usually you're in control, so you don't have to do it.
So, there you go. Yeah, okay, got my video on. This is a question for Jennifer Thronson here. This is, this remedy is a temporary remedy, and it seems like it was created based on some action from our legislators, and usually I'm not sure if they're totally informed on some of their actions, how it created this inequity here. But can you speak to, it looks like it's $606,000 this year. What's being proposed is just temporary. Is it just for this year, or do you see this being subsidized further out, and or is it something that should be brought before the board as maybe a legislative ask, or in some space informing the legislature of the inequity here? We are fortunate enough that it appears that we have funding to temporarily take care of it. Can you speak to that? To my question there, is this temporary, and is this something that should go on our radar with the legislature?
Jennifer, go ahead, and as we're asking you questions, just respond without me interjecting.
No, mute.
Dr. Thronson?
Herself either.
Maybe she went to lunch.
Analyst, and see if that helps.
There we go. That's what's wrong.
You should be unmuted now, Jennifer. No?
Ma'am, I don't know. Maybe Deputy Superintendent Norman is available and can jump in.
It looks like Jennifer should be speaking. I see green wires. Patty, are you?
Would you like me to take us down?
I'll take anyone, and especially you, Dr. Dixon.
I think you
can. I'm good.
that's really muting and unmuting.
Okay, I'm wondering if Jerry is engaged here or how that's working.
Yeah, this is Jerry. Can you hear me? This is Jerry. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jerry, we can hear you. And Jennifer doesn't have an audio source available, but Dr. Dixon doesn't. She can't get in either, and neither can Patty. And they both have sources.
Somebody let me know. So,
Angie, what did you say?
Oh, okay.
You're breaking in and out.
Okay. Nobody's answering.
I'm hearing Chair Belknap just fine, and I think she can hear me just fine. I'm not sure why.
Can, Jerry.
Breaking up.
Can you hear me now? This is Sid.
Yes.
Okay, that is really weird. So I gave a great 10-minute speech and you didn't hear any of it. Is that correct?
Well, I hope it wasn't 10 minutes, and no, we didn't hear any of it.
Okay, so I don't know if Dr. Thronson's back on. I'm now hearing a lot of background speak.
I'm on the phone.
Okay. So, Dr. Thronson, I assume you heard there were kind of two parts to Chair Huntsman's question. One was knowledge and involvement, I think, of the legislature, and then two, he was asking about, is this one-time funding? So those were the two elements to the question that I answered when nobody could hear me. I'm happy to answer again. Let me start with the legislative piece, in that I've been in contact with the Office of the Legislative Analyst, and public head approach chairs have been notified in the second and third level effects of the switch in code
and the resulting price increase by some of our vendors, which has resulted in this gap. And so there is some awareness and acknowledgement, and I'll just turn it back to Dr. Thronson about the one-time funds.
Will you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Oh,
I can hear you.
All right, thank you. So Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. And so for this one, the $606,000, we have $1.5 million in carry forward. So with no changes, we can keep doing this for one more year. So we've got 2 years of kind of a Band-Aid in place. Additionally, for example, with Salt Lake District, who's like, we can go into a multi-year contract. Can we waive our funds for future years? We can then reappropriate those funds to other LEAs. So we actually, I believe we can sustain for probably 3 years before this becomes difficult for us to sustain longer than that with our carry forward and people being able to waive their funds. It depends on which software provider people are going with, whether they have enough money or not enough. And so adding the $6,000 allows for greater flexibility in their software choices, especially for our small LEAs, where like Salt Lake District, who has a very large number of ELs, ended up with more money than they need to be able to pay their vendor. And so they wanted to enter into a multi-year contract and then waive their future funds. So I think from a short term, we're good to go for at least 2 years, potentially 3 with this strategy. And we probably do want to seek some kind of amendment to the allocation distribution in the long run based on what came out of session in August.
Chair Huntsman, do you have a follow-up to that?
Yes, I do. So I see this, what we're proposing to do here as a temporary remedy. I see us moving the $606,000 and then continue our dialogue with the legislature. And then if we need to do this again the following year, then it would come back to finance. And I don't, yeah. I'm not sure if I want to see this be okay, we got a 3-year program, 3-year funding source here for 3 years, but I see this as a temporary remedy through this next year with a dialogue with the legislature happening. That's how I'm viewing the
proposal. We would definitely still come back to you all for permission each year, but with the hopes that this is not our long-term solution. It really is a temporary fix to allow our English learners to receive the service with the inadequate funding mechanism given the new appropriation language. As we talked about yesterday with Scribble, having a statewide contract gives you a greater volume discount that when we go to the LEA level, there's great options in terms of they have more choice over which solution, but the volume discount benefit of having a statewide contract is lost. And so what used to be fine at $3 million is no longer fine given we don't have that same volume discount happening. In fact, yeah, I'm not going to get into it, but the differences in dollars is different now.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair Belknap, for the follow-up.
Thank you. Dr. Thronson, I have a couple of questions, and the first one would be your concern over students, our ELL students in this case, and them not getting the services they need. So the question I have, we're talking about online services, not services. Is that correct?
Yes, this is only software solution. So LEAs can only use it to purchase the software for their English learners. There's no other use allowable.
Do you have data on the growth of our students using this software versus having opportunity to meet with their students either individually or in small groups? Is there better success with one or the other?
The data we have is looking at which students use the software versus students who didn't use the software. And that data shows there's been no significant effect in the differences between the two student groups. Federal law requires that the students are being served in some way, and so all students should be receiving some type of service due to the federal requirement. But the only days that we actually can run in terms of that we have evidence of who used the software versus who didn't shows there's no significant difference between those with access that have been using the software versus those who have not been using the software. And at this point, the legislation changes to allow different softwares to be selected, and so it does give the LEAs an opportunity to maybe find a software solution that is going to prove to be more effective.
In their area?
Yes.
Okay, and you were talking about, no, the other question I have is what is the difference between our ELL students succeeding in an online coursework and those the districts that are using it with fidelity and those that are not? Where's the discrepancy there?
Well, I can not speak to that because we don't have the data. Unfortunately, with our past contract with the software vendor, there was no student level data provided. It was just which schools and how many students at the school participated in the program. So we're not able to dig into that type of information. Our hope is that we can get into some cooperative contracts between the LEAs and the software providers they choose to give us that student level data. I think any program that there's state dollars going into should be evaluated, and to be able to say, is this working? Is it not working? How well is it working? Our previous, decade-long contract never got us there, and so our hope is to change that moving forward, but it is a dearth of knowledge that I can't speak to at this time.
So I would suggest that moving forward, that be part of the procurement piece. Okay, and then
if we had control over it, unfortunately now it's the LEA level, so it's up to them.
Right now it's the LEAs, but that might be a suggestion that you make to them. And then have you found that, how about students, it's not opting out, outgrowing ELL services? And are there certain districts that are using this software that students are getting out of ELL services more quickly? Or can you compare that data?
We could probably look into it. We do know what LEAs are using it, so yeah. We could do an analysis. We haven't looked at it that way yet, but I can definitely have our folks run that.
Okay, and financially, $606,000 for this year. Who would that money go to? Are there certain districts?
Yep. So there's 101 LEAs out of the, I think there's 140-ish that are eligible that are receiving less than $10,000 for their software appropriation. So anyone under $10,000 would be getting those funds. So it's 101 of the 140-ish possible LEAs.
And where'd they get their 10,000?
From the distribution formula. So from the original 3 million.
From the original 3 million. Okay. All right. I just didn't have clarity on that. Sean, do you have any questions on this?
Not at this time. It's a lot to digest, though.
I know, really quickly, isn't it? I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. I think that we are seeking a motion here. Is this an actionable item? I can't see the agenda again.
Isn't it like included in our carry forwards?
Yeah, it is.
Plan?
It's right there. So it is an general.
Isn't it included in? I'm sorry, Chair. I interrupted you, but I wanted.
Go ahead.
So it isn't in the built now into our package. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a general motion.
Okay, but Deborah, did you have anything else you wanted to present to us before we move?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know how we kind of closed. So this year we actually closed with $142.3 million in carry forward. 98.2 of that was in the office budget and 44.1 million of that was in MSP. Of that carry forward balance, $71.2 million was actually obligated by contracts, any kind of procurement process grants to LEAs. Out of the remaining amount was either very small parts of carry forward. They have small balances, which are not coming forward to you. The sections will deal with those internally, or there were restricted funds. So what you're actually seeing right now is anything that was over $100,000, it's unrestricted funding, with the sections kind of thoughts on how to spend that money to keep their programs going and make them better. The other piece of carry forward that we just have to be mindful of is all carry forward is only a temporary solution to things or for one-time projects, as it does become just one-time funding. So that's just something to know just overall. So if there's
I have a question. Can you tell me what the 72.2 million is again? What is it? It's already encumbered?
The 71.2 million, yes, it's yeah. They're encumbrances by either a procurement process or by grants to LEAs.
Okay, and so that brings down the $142 million. Is it to 98? What is it?
Oh, I didn't do that math.
Okay, that's okay. And so then these balance. I'm talking through this in my head, which I get. But then that money that is carry forward. Then this is what?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, this money being carried forward. Then the sections give us business plans to use for their carry forward that they have in their sections.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions by board members?
None from me.
Thank you, Sean. Chair Huntsman? Chair?
I don't have any questions, but I think the motion in the packet, that the recommended action has that proposed motion would work. But did I interrupt Board Member Newell? I didn't know if he was making that motion or.
No, I don't know. Sean, do you want to make the motion?
No, I'll let him make the motion. I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Sean.
All right. I'd make the motion to have that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. That the USBE approve the carry forward balances and amounts and proposals for their use as in our state fiscal year 2020 closing and carry forward balances submittal. I guess I'd call it that. Does that work, by the way?
And forward it to the full board on second and final?
Forward it to the full board for approval.
Okay, any discussion to that motion? And Cammie, are you okay with that motion?
Yep, I got it.
Any discussion to that motion?
Yeah, I've got some.
Okay.
I appreciate all the work that staff has gone in packaging this up, and also the work to do the fantastic job at closing the 2020 year out. There's a lot of work and a lot of detail, and it all came in at the right time. And then also the effort that went into their carry forward balances and proposals with their spend plan. So thank you for those efforts. And again, we're not in that space of getting in a room and rolling our sleeves up and going to work. So kudos there. I thought it was very well done and packaged well. Appreciate Jennifer's presentation also here today. So thank you.
I just want to piggyback on that and say thank you to everybody. We're glad Scott is back. However, we can't thank Deborah enough for the work she did that got us to this point as well. And So Cammie, will you reread the motion before we vote on it? Will you read it out?
So I have that board member Huntsman moved to approve the carry forward balances and amounts for proposal for use as in the state fiscal year 2020 closing and carry forward balances. Proposal. Yeah, I already said proposal.
Yeah, and move forward to the
board for final approval.
Okay, yes. Okay, any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. And magnanimous too, so. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, let's go on to the last presentation. This one I have worked with a little bit with Patrick on, and this has been requests from different board members to figure out how funding is done for the statewide online education program. So Patrick, why don't we turn it over to you? Patrick, is 10 minutes enough to get started and then we can ask questions?
Yes, Chair Belknap, that'll work just fine.
Okay.
I do have both myself and Jake Houtrow. So if it's all right with you, I was going to have Jake do an overview of the funding, and then I was going to launch into something that kind of narrowed things down a bit from one of the presentations that we'd had before in Finance Committee, if that's okay.
All right, thank you. And then Jake, when you come on, introduce yourself, please. And if it doesn't mess up your broadband, we'd love to have you see you while you're giving your presentation. Thank you.
Excuse me, yep. Hi, good afternoon. This is Jake Houtrow, Minimum School Program Administrator. I'm going to attempt to turn on my camera here and hope there's no problems. I think it's coming through. Yeah, hopefully it doesn't mess up my broadband too much. Deputy Superintendent Stallings, would you mind sharing that document titled FY21 SOAP payments year to date, if possible? It's an Excel file. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to.
Jake, I'm sorry. I want to interject just before you start that I do run one of the provider programs, schools here in the state, Utah Online. I just want everyone to know that my conflict of interest there as we're discussing that.
Thank you, Chair Belknap. Yeah, so like I said, I'm going to briefly run through how funding is dispersed across the statewide online education program. Just so if you could just follow along on this spreadsheet, and if anyone has any questions, either we can reserve those for later or we can take them as we go through this spreadsheet. So the first tab, this is my tracking spreadsheet that has the monthly expenditures for the online programs. The first tab is called the primary offset. Essentially, each value that you see there or dollar figure that you see there by district, that's what that district is contributing somewhat indirectly to pay for the online provider payments. And if you go to that second tab, provider distribution, these are the dollar values that went out in July and August. To these, as you can see, there were 6 separate providers that were paid in August and 5 in July. And that total $546,619. If you could go back to the first tab on the primary offset and scroll down to the bottom, please. You'll see that that amount agrees to right there, $546,619. So I mentioned that these payments are made somewhat indirectly. That means that we offset the remaining budget for most of these LEAs in the grades 1 through 12 payment, meaning we reduce their payment that month by this amount, and those dollars go to those providers that you see on the other tab. I hope that's clear. There's another component, and that would be the third tab, home and private distribution. This does have an appropriation that is set by the legislature for fiscal year 21. It is $3.791 million. And this, as you can see, has been paid in July and August. In total of about $532,000 has gone out on this program. A little bit more detail about this. I get this financial information from Dr. Corey Kampf, and she tracks the student data that states which students have passed which online courses and the course fees associated with that passing of that course. And that all that information gets summarized, and then I take those summaries and then make payments accordingly. So that's, I guess, the gist of the online payments here. If there's any questions, I could take them now.
Does anyone have any questions about how the money is distributed from an LEA to a provider? Seeing none, we'll keep going.
Okay, if there are no questions, I guess I will turn my time over to Patrick Lee, School Finance Director.
Okay, thank you, Jake. I think my camera's coming on there. Deputy Superintendent Stallings, if you could go to the other spreadsheet. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so just to preface this spreadsheet is not, well, it is concrete in terms of the data that we use, but it's flexible, I would say, in terms of how we can take a look at things and what we're looking at here, as opposed to what Jake shared, which is the actual payments that go out. So you may remember from a prior finance committee that Dr. Corey Kampf had shared some information related to per pupil revenue. So there's some questions around that figure, which in this particular spreadsheet, that figure is under scenario 1, which is the all LEAs. It's the per pupil revenue, which is $9,877. And the way that was calculated is, sorry, let me take one step back, that this is data that is from fiscal year 19. So I want to make sure that that's clear. That's the most up to date and recent we have. We'll have fiscal year 20 coming up, and we could share that at a later time. But the per pupil revenue is calculated with the total enrollment and then the total revenue that goes out to all of the LEAs. And so that is the number that was used by Dr. Kampf when she shared her presentation before. What we did is we broke down this number, looked at it in a little further detail. And so we took a look at all LEAs combined, but in different segments as far as their student population. So the first would be the large LEAs, medium LEAs, and then small LEAs. Small LEAs were those with less than 1,000 students, medium LEAs greater than 1,000 but less than 10,000, and then large is greater than 10,000. And so it was the same information from the financial reports, the enrollment amount divided by the revenue amount, divided by the total enrollment, giving us the per pupil revenue. So for the large LEAs in scenario 1, it's came in at 9,676. The medium LEAs, 10,981. And then the small LEAs, 9,154. And looking at this is what we're trying to get at. And I think the gist of some of the conversations was how much money is staying with the district versus how much money is going to the providers. And based upon what actual amount the districts actually receive for a student and have to be able to spend upon that student. And so those per pupil revenue amounts is what we're trying to get a closer look at it from different angles. And we can also use different thresholds. This is nothing set in stone. That's why I didn't include this in the backup. If the finance committee members want to take a different look, we can change this. It's not something that we have to use those thresholds absolutely of the 10,000 or medium between 1,000 and 10,000 and less than 1,000 for small districts or LEAs. Now, if you'll go over to scenario 2 and take a look there,
Patrick,
Yes.
will you just remind me one more time about
Sure.
the revenue we're looking at? We're looking at WPU, local replay. What else? What's the revenue?
Yeah, this would be all possible revenue sources for an LEA that could pay for a student and their education. So it would include the state funding. It would include any federal funding, any other types of grants that might be received and reported by the LEA.
Okay. Yeah, just one more follow-up question.
Okay.
If that student did not attend that school, would they lose all those pieces of the funding? Would they lose, like in number one over here, would they lose the $9,877 if that child did not attend that school?
If they didn't attend that school, potentially yes. My understanding is that it would likely show up for in another LEA, unless of course they transferred out of the state or something along those lines.
Okay.
So in that sense, yeah, it wouldn't show up.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so now under scenario 2, what we did is we broke out the charter schools basically. So we looked at all school districts, not the charters. And Angie, if you could scroll down just slightly so that you can kind of see all districts versus all charter schools. But what we did is we did break out the districts by large district, medium-sized district, and small district. And so you can compare the districts themselves versus the charter schools. So if we look at all districts together, it's per pupil revenue of about $10,065 versus with the charters per pupil revenue $8,483. Then if you look at the districts themselves, large, medium, small, you can see some of the differences. Large districts, 9,676, medium districts, 12,191, and small districts, 19,679. Now, granted, that is, a very small student population or enrollment population for the small districts. And like I said, we can change this. We can look at it differently. That's completely fine. This is just something to be a kind of a starter piece and help promote discussion in what you all want to look at. Any questions on this part of things?
Any questions from committee members? Okay, Patrick, you may continue.
Okay, this is the main gist of what I wanted to focus on for this time. I know that you had requested some examples of students, and I believe that Dr. Kant had shared 2 examples before. I have to apologize, we weren't able to get those fully ready for this presentation, but we're close to having those ready, and we can send those out to the committee members so that you can take a look at those and hopefully have some more discussion on that part of things in a subsequent finance committee meeting. So we do have this portion of it, and I wonder if this helps start getting to some of the questions that you want to get at for the funding flow.
For me, it does. I'm thinking we really do need those scenarios of the students. And so I'm hoping that we can have those for next meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
And along with these scenarios, and maybe these scenarios being absolute rather than draft like they are today. And and maybe they are concrete now. Patrick, are they?
Yeah, the numbers that are here are, and what I mean by draft is we don't have to keep it at these thresholds. So the numbers you see here are exactly what they are in the AFRs for the districts and for the charters. It's exactly what they are. But if you do want to look at different thresholds, then we can talk about that and we can create something a little different, as in what's defined as large, what's defined as medium, and so forth.
I think probably, and Board Member Lear has also been talking to me a lot about this because she'd like to, she and I would like to know how this is funded. I think this is probably going to be fine for this piece. Then if we can have the breakdown of the students like we had talked about earlier, if we
Sure.
could have those next month. And then also, Angie, I'm hoping we can bring the rule along with that information. Patrick, Angie, you okay with that?
Yes, I'm great with that.
Patrick,
Yeah, we can
okay?
absolutely do that. You bet.
Okay, so board member Lear just texted me. She said she doesn't really understand the enrollment. She doesn't understand. She said she didn't agree that it's almost $10,000 a student. So maybe at some point she might want to call you, Patrick, and you can kind of go through that with her at some point rather than
We can do that.
reversing here. So I'll throw that out to both of you.
Okay.
Also, any committee members, do you have any questions on what Patrick or Jacob have presented today?
No, thank you for the information, folks.
Absolutely.
Looks like Chair Huntsman's hand is raised.
Well, I did say Chair Huntsman, but my mic was off. Chair
There you go.
Huntsman.
And I'm looking forward to next month. I think some of my questions will be resolved in the next month's presentation. So thank you. I appreciate this information. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I know that there's going to be some back work between UTREX and the SEATS program and making sure that those balance, those quote unquote sheets balance. So I know that this wasn't. Go ahead, Patrick.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, yeah, that's what's taken us a bit longer to make sure that we have that as accurate as we can for you all. So when you take a look at it, you're looking at some good data.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. I appreciate Dr. Kant's work on the statewide online education program. Also, this is an action item today, but we are not going to take action. I just asked Patrick to bring it in case we were ready to move, but we are not ready to take action on this item. So committee members, unless you have anything else, I think that's the end, right? Then we can adjourn from this meeting. So Sean or Mark, do you have anything else today?
No, thank you. Thank you. Good meeting. Appreciate everything, everyone that participated.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you all.
Have a great day.
Take care. Be safe.
Jerry, I'm going to go ahead and exit out, which means the meeting will end. Is that okay?